Okay, so I have this little scene here for the tutorial I was doing. Say you wanted to build this out. You can go to File, Build Settings. So you have to add your scenes into your build. That's pretty important. And then go through these settings of what you want to build to. For this, just do PC. I don't think anybody's doing a mobile game as of right now, but if you wanted to go through those settings, you can. And then you just hit build. And then you select the folder where you want it to go. I'm just going to select this folder. We'll go through the process. Okay, and then wherever you set it, that's where your exe will live. Oh, okay. Thanks for letting me know, Danielle. I'll add them. To make a zip is fairly simple. So say this is your project folder. All you have to do is right-click it, send to, and then compress the zip folder. It's probably because it's open right now, but that would go through and create the zip file for you. Any other quick questions that anybody has before I start? Yeah, I would like it to be separate. I mean, you can just attach both of them to the assignment. If you really want to put the executable in there, sure, but I would prefer it just be a separate thing that you add onto the assignment, just to make it easier on me. All right, I'm going to go ahead and talk about shaders. So I don't know how many of you have already messed around with shaders, but they can be pretty cool. Add different effects to things, essentially. So, well, first, I also, whenever I have time, I've outlining effects. Yeah, I'm going to go into that. So I'm going to go through a couple of shaders. If I find my notes. Yeah, I'm going to go through a couple. A dissolve shader, an ocean, cell shading, which is the outline effect, and a force field type of effect. So those are the shaders I'm going to be going through. It's kind of the same process. It's just messing around with the settings and going through the menu that it has. I'm going to briefly touch on particle systems because, again, it's one of those things where it gets super finicky. And I'll probably touch on lighting a bit. Again, lighting is one of those things that you have to have an eye for, and I'm definitely not one of those people. But we'll talk about that. So let's get into it here. Real quick, if you wanted to learn a bit more about what's called the juice of your game, adding that extra polish or going that extra mile, this is a good video that talks about it, taking pretty much like a breakout game and really making it interesting. Open environment, having shaders on every object can cause problems. It can. It's one of those, it's one of those things where you have to test things and make sure it's optimized and stuff. Some like, I think lighting is more intensive than the shaders are, because usually lighting has the dynamic shadows and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I believe there's a way to turn off the shaders. To be honest, I don't have a lot of experience optimizing for shaders. I just, I usually just throw them in and hope for the best. And if something uh, isn't optimized, then I go in and probably just remove it. But that's probably not the best way to do it. But so, alrighty. So, keep losing my place every time. Sorry, 1 second here. Okay, first thing we're gonna do is create a shader. Right click, create. I am going blind. Oh, right in the top, right? Believe it's unlit. It's double clicking here. No, that's not what I want. Like a standard surface shader I want. I didn't know that either. I'm sorry, it's been quite some time since I've had to do one of these. I don't think that's it either, but give it a shot. No. Sorry guys, just give me 1 second. Sorry, everyone, for this. I think I figured out what the issue was. Hopefully that resolves it. Yeah, sorry. I'm troubleshooting why I'm not getting my shader options that I'm looking for. I think it's still downloading. Oh, well, all right then. I don't know what it's doing now. Maybe that's why I didn't update the shader graph. Give that a shot, maybe. Yes, all right, that's what I'm looking for. The PBR graph is what I'm looking for. All right, now we're back on track. And then, okay. So in order to get this map, you have to first go to Window, go to your package manager, go down to shader graph, and just make sure this is updated. Once you have this updated, I believe you should be getting these settings to create shader a PBR graph, and it'll create this. Once you double click on it, then you will get this shader system. It's a lot like, I believe, Unreal's is, where you can attach materials and stuff. So it's a pretty robust system where you can add different nodes to do different things in here. So you move these around as you need to. First thing we're going to do is bring the color down a bit. Won't know why I'm having an issue here. When it's pink like this, it means that you have an issue. What does it say? Current master highlight is not compatible with this master node. What does that mean? Oh, I think in order to use this, just go ahead and save. Yeah, these nodes are not fun. Again, usually I don't really mess with shaders that much, but let's see, create. For rendering, I believe. I think we're missing another package here. We'll build part. Oh, jeez. Trying to remember where to find the LW pipeline. Oh, I think that is what I'm looking for. And so you need the lightweight render pipeline also installed. Okay, so now should be able to create, yes, I believe it's a pipeline asset. Yes. Graphics. Yeah, I don't think I need to worry about that. Hopefully this works now. Let's see. Still doing stuff. Now I need to assign this somewhere in graphics. Oh, maybe right there. Yeah, okay. There we go. Back in business. Okay. So now we're going to create, by hitting spacebar, a simple noise. And we're just going to give this 30. And then we're going to connect this to the alpha of our PBR master. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, so if we make this transparent, you can see that this noise is being applied to the shader, but we don't really want that for this, so we're gonna put it back to opaque. So right now you don't see anything. Okay. Now from here, we're going to create a vector1. It's pretty much a variable. And then we're going to connect that to the alpha clip threshold. So when we up this, it essentially tells you what is telling it what the threshold would be for this noise. So the greater it is to 1, more it's removed. So again, this is just a variable, vector1. If you think of what we've been using, like vector 2D, vector, or vector 3, those are pretty much like 3 different floats, right? Well, vector1 would just be, you know, 1 float that you're messing around with. So it's basically just a variable, right? Okay. So now I'm going to create time. And a remap. Oh, hold on. No, it's a regular remap. Okay. So we have this going from black to white, and then we can connect this to our alpha clip threshold. You see it'll go in and out. Okay. We're going to create a step. We're going to connect that to our noise for the edge. Okay. And essentially what we're doing with this is that we're going to be creating an offset. Sorry, give me 1 second. Sorry about that, everyone. Yeah, anytime anybody or he thinks that anyone's at the door, he goes bananas. Okay, we're going to create a step here. So let's down this. to we also have to connect this to our remap, please. And then also we need to put the output to this to emission. Make sure I have this set up correctly. You can see why these things can get pretty hairy when you have all these connections, like inputs and outputs going to different things here. Oh, this vector one got removed. I think it just goes to that. It's interesting that I'm not seeing the effect I'm looking for here. Oh, that is why you put an add. Oh, okay, and then put this into here. Put that out there. So this essentially is doing the inverse. It's adding instead of removing. Remember, it was black before, and so I think now maybe. Still not doing the effect that I want it to. Oh, I think this needs to have two outputs from the remap to the alpha clip. It's still not doing it. I'm looking for a essentially an edge to this effect. Oh, maybe this is, yeah. Yeah, so now you can see it. So now you have, it's essentially stepping the transition 2 times, and this is, this add is what determines that essentially the thickness of the second one. So you make that like super, super small, like 0.01. So yeah, now you have like a thinner line around the edges of this dissolve. Sorry, I just took a look at the chat. So, but again, yeah, as I know it looks like a rat's nest of connections, but once you start messing around with it and understanding how these nodes are connected, you can do some pretty interesting things. I'm trying to make it as neat as possible. Can you keep an outline? Well, are you talking about like cell shading, or I mean, because that's slightly different than what this effect is doing. But we'll get into that. This is just one of the shaders that we're going to be talking about today. Yeah, I mean, if you up this even more, that determines the thickness of essentially the edge. So if you crank it, you can see that it's doing some interesting things for sure. So inverse transition, probably. I wonder what happens if you do this. Yeah, didn't do much of anything. I'm not too sure how to inverse this without this getting pretty crazy. So, okay, now we're gonna add a multiply to this. Take the output from our step and put that into the input of the multiply. And then we're also going to add a color. So it's not just black and white. Bring it into like a bluish thing. Whoa. Actually, put this down here, and then put this input here. All right, and then lastly, we're going to take that output and put that on emission as well. Kaboom! All right, and then with this, instead of this being one color, we can do right click, convert to a property. So in our editor, we'll actually be able to change that color whenever we want. And probably rename this to edge color. And we'll create another property here, a vector one, that is the edge width. Default that to 0.01. Our property should have been made. Oh, maybe I just have to go ahead and make that property. Yeah, property edge width. And we go ahead and plug that into your input here. So then now we also have control in the editor for that edge width, so we don't have to mess around in this shader. Okay. And if we want even more control, we can add a noise scale. You can just default that to 30. So now we have full control over that as well. Another interesting thing you can do, if you notice it's kind of transparent, you hit two-sided. That looks a little bit better because you can see the other side of it. To an exist, yeah, absolutely. Because that's just the material, which is different than a shader. So once you have all this, save it. Not sure why this is crying, but oh, I think I need to add. For the box material, simple lit. I'm just gonna put that material on there too. Interesting. I'm gonna go ahead and create another material so this is not so weird. I think it's just because it's rendering in real time. So maybe if I just try running this thing, runs a bit smoother. And we have all of our settings here. So you can change it on the fly, you can change your edge width, crank it a bit. So. So yeah, that's basically the dissolve. Again, I think it's just my computer's is not liking the full render in the editor. But yeah, so you add your materials to the box that can have its own images, and then you can add shaders on top of that change the properties as well. Okay. So now I'm going to create sphere. Sphere. Shader. Okay, the same process as before to get to this menu here. We can scooch this down a bit so it's not so much in our way. We're going to create a node. Bundle effect. We're going to add a property called counter. Add 3, add a property in. That'll allow us to set it whenever we want.
Lie down.
We're going to add a step node.
Stay.
And connect that from our output into the in. Our output to albedo. So let's just take a look at that and see what that does. You create a material for our sphere. Okay. Shader graphs instead. Shader sphere. There we go. Hold on. I think it just needs to be a small, maybe possibly bigger. Oh, I believe I missed a parameter. So let's go back into our sphere shader and create another one for the edge. The 0.5. we are going to add that in. Set that value there. So you can start to see it's getting there. So now we're starting to get that that effect that we're looking for. It's kind of hard to see with a sphere. The trigger shaders, I'm sure you could. You could like do a get component of a shader and then probably activate it, I would imagine. I can look that up. I haven't had to do that before, but yeah, I'm sure you could trigger something to create a shader and then add whatever you have in your assets and say, hey, apply this to whatever object. So I think the only thing you have to do other than that is just kind of pick a different color. Try that. Save. Still doesn't like that. So that's kind of like a simple way to do like a white outline. The black one is a bit more complicated because you can add different exposures and stuff. I believe if you do this with, like, you make a wall, this thing goes into it. Yeah, it doesn't. It has issues with it. I believe there is a way so that if it's overlapping, you kind of get the edge going into it. But either way, let's just go through the other material. It's a bit it's a bit complex, but stick around. So we're going to create a shader, PBR graph. I'm going to go console shader. Okay. First, I'm going to create a node called scene depth. Okay. Oh, I believe I know why that one doesn't work. I believe it has a camera issue. That's what it is. So let's create another node called multiply. We're going to put the output of our scene depth into our multiply. And then we're going to create a camera node. And the far plane. Okay, from there, we're going to create a node called tracks. And in. Again, this will probably make sense by the end of it, but I have to set everything up first. So next we have to create a screen position node, and then a split node. Connect the output of that into there, and then this alpha input into the subtract. Change that to raw. Create position node. Add node. Let's make sure that's world. Again, all of this is because of setting it up, but the camera view is changing the outline as you move the camera. And we have a transform. That output of the add will go into the input of the transform. Go from the world to the object. And output will go to the position. We can collapse these because we don't really need to see this. New called subtract. And that output will go into there. Create another node called object, to which the position will be connected to the subtract. And the subtract will also have a multiply node as the output. So essentially, this is like add subtractive position of the camera. This is what it is setting up so that it adds or removes the material based on, I guess, positioning of the camera. So we're going to create a property here. I'm going to call it position multiply. And we are going to add that in our nodes here. Into our multiply here. Trying to get to the chat, but it is not letting me. Yeah, it's essentially it's like kind of rendering out the material based on position. So then move this stuff over here. And this output also gets added into the add. So let's save it and take a look here. Create another material. Set white. Oop. Whoa. What's going on here? Oh, that's the wrong shader. Not sure why the whole thing is coming up here. Make sure I got my connections correct. And my property. Huh. Switch that to that. Better shine. It's still doing some interesting things. Oh, I think that might be my issue. So I need to add another multiply here. Coming from the subtract to A1. 1 minus node. From there. And that output goes to albedo. Then I need another property here. Depth multiply. And then that is going to be let's see if that does anything for us. Still going super big. Oh, yeah, put that on a slider. See what that is. Just see what this is doing in the camera. That's still white. Again, shaders aren't necessarily the most fun things to set up, but when they work, they can be pretty cool. So your camera, apply, going to subtract, screen position to split. So that is the offset. Slider. Sorry, this one has a lot of settings to it. That's why it's a bit complicated. Going to subtract. Yeah, to answer your question, the videos are already up. Yeah, I'll still have them up after the semester's over as well. So. Hold on. I think I know what the problem is. So we have this here. Oh. Somehow that's a negative 1-to-1. I'm going to drop this. Yeah, there it is. Just hiding. Put that to 0. I'm just going to put that. We're going to make that default 0.1, so we have a little bit more room on there. Depth multiply. Okay. No, that's not what I wanted. Aha! So you see what it's doing? Rather than cutting through everything, it's getting moved based on the position of the camera. And that's what real cell shading is all about. So if we put the same material on this, you'll notice it's kind of continuing. I'm sure it's a settings thing, but you'll see that it's like kind of continuing with the outline of the other box. Oh, sorry, not this video, obviously, but the other ones. But there you go. You got some cell shading going on there. And all you had to do is all of this, right? I'll leave you here for a second, just in case you want to map it later. So, okay. I'm gonna take like a 10-minute break, and when I come back, we'll start getting into some like ocean effects. So, all right, see you in 10 minutes. I know I said 10 minutes, but I'm back. I'll give it another 5 minutes, obviously. But if you guys are doing something, did you guys want? So I could do like an ocean shader if you want to do that. I can mess with the particle system because we have an hour. So I don't know if I have time to get everything, but it's either the ocean shader or the force field shader if you want to do that. If anybody has a preference, just shout it out. The two shaders are an ocean shader, so I mean, just it gives you kind of like a water with like some foam and stuff that you can mess around with. The other one's like a force field, kind of if you played Overwatch, Winston's like shield, similar to that. I think that's all the time we're gonna have, but I can post some references in case you want to look up the other stuff as well. Force field. All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So it's gonna be a similar process. So I go ahead and get that guy out of there just because it seems like he's having a problem. I'm gonna go ahead and make this wall a bit bigger. So we can see the changes that we are having on this effect. I like we're using the camera, but I'll move that, position it that way. Effective standard. Just trying to set it up so we can see everything a bit better. All right, I'm gonna create a sphere. I'm gonna make that sucker pretty big. Create material. I'm gonna say this guy. Right? Okay. Let's make it a little bit bigger or higher there. And I'm gonna create shader, PBR graph. So first, I'm going to create a depth node. Depth I. Create a screen position node. Raw. Split. That output to the split input. And now we're going to add subtract and connect our output from the screen depth into the subtract. And then we're going to take the alpha from the split and put that as an input as well. We're going to output this all to an emission. All right, like we did before, we're going to put this from opaque to transparent. Go ahead and save it and see what it looks like. I got to let's see. So you can see it's a bit transparent. All right, so now we're gonna create a property. We're gonna create an offset property. Actually, I think we're gonna split this up here. So we're gonna go ahead and remove this. We're gonna create its own subtract here. Okay, and then out put the emission as before. This property will be our offset. That is the 1, that's the 2. Change the default to 0.6. And then we're going to add that one into this one. That gives us more flexibility on our offset. So now we go into the shield shader. There's some funky stuff happening, but we have more control over what that offset subtraction is doing. Okay, let's go back in here. Oh, wrong one. So rather than this going into the emission, let's have this go into the alpha. Just save that. Now it's kind of looking a bit nicer, right? And then We can go to our offset, kind of make it the effect a bit more subtle, like right on the edge there. But not only that, if you had like actual graphic on there, it would actually pick up the colors and stuff. So it's not. It's essentially a transparent sphere at this point, so you can actually see through it. So let's go back. So we're gonna add some more customization here. Add a 1- node into this. Move these over bits. And add a smooth step to this. And that smooth step will go back into our alpha. Kind of organize this a bit better here. Okay. Now we're getting a subtle effect on the edge here. You can see when you mess around a bit, kind of getting more of the edge. Okay, so let's go back into our shader. I'm going to create a color property. I put this into HDR. I'm going to make this into like a bluish color. Why? Change the color. Interesting. Can't change it that way, but I can change it to the color wheel. So that's it. I think it's because I messed up the solid color. Go back in here. Okay. Oh, I see. One thing I need to do, add that property into emission. There we go. Now it's looking a bit nicer. And we can pull it in a bit so it looks a bit sharper. Yeah. Yeah. Yes and no. You're not actually changing the material. You're changing the properties of the shader that is on the material. If that makes any sense. It's like an extra layer to a material. So being that on this particular shader that we made it transparent, you're probably not going to see whatever texture that you put on it. But say, you had a shader that didn't mess with any transparency or anything, you would see the material that is on your character. You would just have this extra shader on top of it. That's how cell shading works, right? Because you're not necessarily changing the material that is on the object. You're creating essentially a shell around your material that has different effects to it. Okay, so I was looking for something here. Not sure where it is. Oh, there it is, post-processing profile. Okay. Color grading. Blue. Sorry, I'm trying to add like a glowy effect. Bloom's supposed to be doing it, but I don't know why it's not. It is supposed to be working for it, but it is not. idea. You can add like post-processing effects to it. So, okay, let's try some more stuff here. Five. Then we're going to create a vector for this called present power. There. Add. Put that in there. Rather than going from the smooth step to the master, we're going to delete this node, and then we're going to tie it this one here, and then that one will go to the emission. Let's tie that emission back. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, this needs to go to alpha. Okay. See how that's looking. Boom. Kind of looks like a force field. Yeah, and we can change the amount of glow that effect has. There is a way to make like all of this glow with post-processing. Oh, maybe I need to add this to the material, possibly. I'm not sure. There is a way to make this thing glow, and I know it's with bloom, but I'm not entirely sure how to use it. Okay, let's keep building on this here. Okay, so we're going to create a texture 2D. Rename that pattern. Okay. For this, I'm going to grab a hexagon pattern, if I can find it real quick. Give me 1 second here. I gotta import texture. So we're gonna go back into shader here. Did I not save? Oh, I'm in the. You want to go into fancy. I need to get into force field. Texture. It's con texture. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and add that pattern into here. And we're also gonna add a sample texture 2D. We're gonna go ahead and plug that texture in. Go ahead. Move this down a bit to here. Add multiply, plug that in. This, pop it into here. Put this back into alpha. And that's kind of small, but okay. Highlighting an offset, put that into UV. Time, and then multiply. Put those two together. We're going to create another property here. Scroll speed. Default 5. I'm going to add that property in to here. And we're going to throw it onto this multiply. We're going to put all of this and plug it into the offset. So now you can see it's moving around a bit. So save it, take a look at what you're doing here. So yeah, go for here. We have to select our texture. I'm sure there's a way to scale this down. Let's try just doing it in here, see what it looks like. Going crazy. Let's try dropping this down a bit. Or I guess increasing it rather. Editor's not thoroughly, program's not liking it that much. I think it is my texture. I think it just needs to be a larger texture because you can see it's kind of working. Like it works in this editor here, and you can see that it's slowly moving. Okay, so we can add some other stuff here. Let's collapse some of this so we have some space. We still have this. We have a multiply here. I'm gonna go ahead and move this. I'm gonna do an add. Plug it back in. Plug that back into the alpha. I'm going to create a property here. Multifill. Give it 0.01. And then I'm going to call that property. Oop. So let's see. What the heck is this? Yeah, we're able to adjust the amount of fill that we have on our little force field thing. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with this. I'm sure if you continue to fiddle around with it, you get it, more optimized. And again, I just pulled this hexagon texture off. I think it's just too huge for this sphere. But if you have your own custom ones, I'm sure it'll work much better. So yeah, that's kind of a way to use different shaders to do different things. I encourage you to use them. Don't go crazy with them, obviously, but they can really add a lot of polish to your games and different effects that you're doing. So I'm gonna call it there for tonight. Again, I'll be around until 8 o'clock, or if you need me to stay longer than that, just let me know. And I will see you all next week with your completed games. So again, if you have any questions from now until then, please don't hesitate to email me. So I'm glad to help you guys. I want to see you guys succeed. So, alrighty, you guys have a good night.